Long, you had a question?
Yes.
Go for it, my man.
I have two questions. First, how to practice bow trick effectively?
I did not understand what you just said. Say it again.
Like let me send the question in in the chat.
Yeah, that might be better.
Yeah.
Sorry, I try not to make it harder for you. It's just I think you have a thick accent and makes it harder for me to understand. But if you write it, I should be able to read
Okay.
it. If I can't read it, then that's my problem.
Yeah, I send it to you.
Perfect. Okay, question number 1. How to practice pose gird effectively. I don't know what gird means.
It's the tip you teach me in the Wednesday.
Hold on, let me read the other ones too. Hold on. I often draw very slowly because of the lack of visual library. Was there any way to remember it longer? Okay, so how do I pose? How do I practice pose grid effectively? I'm thinking you may mean like grid. It's the only other word I can think of. And the visual library. So you forget things. Well, the reason why you may forget how to draw certain things based off of this grid that you're referring to, or this kind of like visual library, even like all that stuff's kind of related. The reason why this happens is because you're not practicing it enough. Okay. And so if I were to tell you to remember this sequence of numbers, okay, 4, 3, 5, 6, right?
Yeah.
And then I just get rid of it, and then you're just gonna have to remember that again, right? And right now you probably remember it, you know. But if I were to ask you next week, most likely you're not gonna remember it. You know?
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Now, why not?
Yeah.
Because you don't find
Because
it important. You don't try to keep it in your memory. But let me ask you a question. Like, are there numbers that you do actually know? Like, you can just say them right now. Now, you obviously don't say any number. Like, but like for instance, like a PIN number or like a password, right?
Yeah.
These things you remember, right? Like these sequence of numbers, your birth date, you know, someone else in your family's birthday. But why? How come you remember these series of numbers versus that random ass series of numbers? Well, it's because the other numbers have some importance to you, and you're constantly reminded to why you should remember them. Right? So now think about that with art and like visual library specifically. Let's say you do a study and you learn a lot from it. Dang, I keep doing that. You learn a lot from it, but that's it. You don't do anything else after that. Okay? You do that one assignment and then you never do it again. So it's like learning that random number that I just showed you and then immediately never practicing it ever again. So what does that mean then? So if you learn something, you should practice that thing over and over again. Right? So when I was learning how to draw like robots and robotic parts, or you know what, let me use a better example. When I was just showing you guys the anatomy drawing, right? I did very poorly, remember? Well, that's because I don't practice drawing anatomy stuff, or anime stuff. But if I wanted to get good at that, like if I really wanted to, I would go out of my way to study that stuff aggressively, right? I would just keep drawing anime faces for weeks on end, you know, until I understood and have a second hand understanding of that thing. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So now think about that now with your own practices now. Do you ever really do that? And you might do that for some things, and that's why those some things stay in your mind, right? Because you practice them often, right? Whenever people start to draw something and they have like these shapes that they just always draw, like myself, I have just shapes that I just draw constantly, you know?
Yeah.
It's because of that simple principled idea that I just talked about of the more you draw something, the more you're going to remember it, right? The more you do something, the more you're going to remember it. Oh my gosh, my baby. What the hell?
Yeah.
Just started freaking out. Um, do you see what I'm saying though?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I think even me saying that, right? I'm sure you're starting to think like, oh yeah, I don't really do that often, right? Like you wouldn't like. I feel like with art, people forget to. People don't do this. People don't do this with art. They don't compare it to other things that we do. For whatever reason, art is just different, right?
Yeah.
Like art's just different. It doesn't work the same way as like I don't know, gaining muscles or remembering your friend's phone number, you know? No, it's all the same brain. Our brain can care less what we call it. It still treats it the same, you know?
Uh,
We can call it whatever we want, like tapping into your creativity, artist block, um, harnessing the spirits, whatever the hell you want to call what you do that's creative, right? Your brain is just like whatever, like the same things that make it work run that run that way. See, what's happened is that in time history, we have looked at art as something like magical because people who were really good at it, they themselves couldn't really explain it, you know? And so they were just kind of like, yeah, I'm just talented. But there are some clues that some artists didn't feel this way. Uh, One of my favorites, Michelangelo, he was like this. In fact, he hated people like Leonardo da Vinci because Leonardo da Vinci was, in his opinion, was a spoiled brat. Leonardo da Vinci was a privileged person where Michelangelo wasn't, and that really pissed him off. And he felt like Da Vinci wasn't actually a good artist, but just like somebody who just happened to have all these opportunities. Anyway, the original troll, dude, Michelangelo. But I love Michelangelo. He's one of my favorite artists because he worked so hard. And whenever he was trying to learn art, he would go into people's houses and steal their paintings. You know why? Because there was no other way to learn, and so he would steal their paintings. And he was an amazing sculptor. Why? Because he was originally a stone carver, right? So he knew how to manipulate stone in a chisel. You know what I mean?
okay.
And so he grew these skills because he put that time and effort in there. You know what I mean? And and he had like a second hand knowledge of all these things because he actually put that practice in. You know?
Mm.
And so I think it's important whenever you think about like how to get better at something, you just remember like, okay, why is it so hard to remember stuff? And then ask yourself, what do you normally do to try to remember stuff? You know? Or what have you seen work, or what have you done in the past that has worked to help you remember stuff? Why aren't you doing that with art? Yeah, like I said, like it's the human arrogance that I was talking about earlier that makes us think that we're like this special beings with special powers. We're only all of what we think is special about us is our own invention. You know, like we imply all these things onto ourselves. It is by our own definition that we think this is true. You know, it is in our own definition that we think consciousness and our technological advances in life and all that stuff that we think that's valuable, you know. But in my opinion, it's just kind of like by what measure, you know what I mean? And so, not to get too philosophical, just get back on the point. Whenever you're trying to get better at stuff, guys, like that's the way you should think about it. Like why am I making this more of a big deal than it is? Why, like the journey to excellence is actually very simplistic, you know, and yet people want to make it more complicated. They want to like add all this kind of crazy layers to it. It's real simple. You don't remember stuff because you don't practice remembering it, you know. And if you were to just draw the same kind of crazy poses every day for a year, you're gonna get really good at drawing crazy poses to the point where you don't even think about it anymore. It's like riding a bike, you know? Do you think about like every time you're riding a bike? No, you just do it.
I
Anyway,
understand.
yeah, hopefully that helps you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. All right, great. Let's see. Someone is writing a lot in the chat. I prefer if you guys talk. I think with Long, it makes sense that he typed it up. But
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
yeah, you guys are welcome to speak. I prefer it because then I don't have to read.
Can I go next?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm trying to start like an art blog that has like all my portfolio pieces and some like
Cool.
art. Oh, to show that like I understand what I'm trying to do. So like, should I use my real name for my domain or like come up with like a fake name? What's your opinion?
Well, what's your full name?
It's on Felice Henriquez, but like the thing is, I don't want like people like searching up my old pieces. I feel like it's gonna be embarrassing. Like people can like get my all my security. People can like get my phone number and stuff. Like, raising
You're afraid of like people finding you out?
that's right.
I don't think that's gonna happen. I mean, I'm not gonna say that it can't happen. I'm just saying I don't think it's gonna happen. Um, you can do whatever you want. If you want to like have people not find you, and that's the reason, then yeah, by all means, do it. But I'm just saying, I don't think that's how it works. Especially like if you put your information out there, um, in any capacity, people should be able to still find it, even regardless of your name. What you should do though, and recognize is like people should still be able to get a hold of you if they want to employ you. And so if they don't have any way of accessing you because you're super nervous about people finding you out, then I would suggest come up with an email that's attached to something that you'll check often, you know.
Okay.
Um,
And
but I wouldn't worry about it. Like there's this terrifying story that happened where this popular like pop star in, I believe it was Korea. It was one of those Far East nations. I forget exactly. And she took a selfie of like herself in her apartment, and this guy with that information found where she lived, and then like basically, you know, harassed her, like attacked her, you know.
okay.
So I mean, people will do it if they really want to do it. They'll figure it out, you know. And using that same story, that's like that is very rare. What that was, you know, it doesn't happen too often. I mean, there are some great stories of, or I'm sorry, not great, but great examples of your point, you know,
Yeah.
but they're very rare, right? And when they do happen, they can be very bad for sure, you know. Um, so for me, for instance, I'm a very popular artist, and I will say that it is definitely different. I'm like a 180-pound man, you know, and I look like I could probably kill you. I won't. I'm not that type of person. I don't know how to fight in that level, right? But if you didn't know that, you probably still wouldn't mess with me, you know? Um, I don't know what you look like, but I'm just making an assumption that it's just different. Okay. You know, I always say this even with my wife. I always tell her that it's just different, you know? And she's like, "What? It's not different." And I'm like, "It's definitely different." Especially my wife. If you ever seen pictures of my wife, she's very, very beautiful, right? And so,
Okay, sorry. 3 more questions because I don't want to make this too long.
no, don't worry. This is a pretty important point I want to make. That's all.
Okay,
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, we have plenty of Q&A time too. Don't worry, we're good. And so, um, I just want to make it clear, like you should just not worry about that type of stuff as much. But I'm not also against you trying to be a little bit more, private. I think that's fine. You know, I'm just saying, just don't make it so much about your privacy that you like become too private for anybody to find you at all. Like no one will be like, I'm trying to hire this person, but like they have like 5 different aliases. I have like 3 different like author, uh, authorizing and like checking that I'm not a robot on her website. It's crazy. What the hell? Like just be smart about how you want to build that is all I'm getting at. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my second question is, what's the art test like? Like, because I heard that when you try to get a concept art job, they ask you to do like an art test.
Sure.
And like, how long does that take? And what do they basically ask you to do?
Yeah, it depends on who you're working for and where you're working. But ultimately, the art test is as it sounds. It's just a test. Okay.
Okay.
And what are they testing? Well, they're testing if you're capable of working for them. So let's say we're working on a sci-fi adventure game, okay? And we look at your portfolio and we don't really see much sci-fi artwork. We see maybe 1 or 2. But we do like the ones that we see. The test is to help us to see that if you're actually able to do it. We will give you usually a short amount of time to do it too, like within a week.
Okay.
And so you would have to like not only have the concepts, the render, the turnaround, all this type of stuff most likely in a week's time. It's a genuine test of your ability. Because it might be that fast when you're actually working. And if you get the job based off of those 2 pieces, but those 2 pieces took you 3 months to do for whatever reason, you're not qualified for that work, even though they like your artwork.
Gotcha.
And so that's what art tests usually are based off of. You take less art tests, the more clear you can qualify for that job. For instance, I draw lots of monsters and robots on my website, so nobody asks me to do art tests for these things. I had to pitch my abilities to a company recently, but it was just a pitch. And we got the job, and then we're doing great. They love it. They love everything we've been doing.
And my third question is, what questions do you ask when you observe objects? Like anything that's
What kind of question did I ask when I observe objects?
Yeah, like do you like look at the
Okay,
shape?
that's a great question, actually. Yes, it's specifically when I observe objects, it's specifically depending on what it is. It will be somewhere along the lines of the shapes, like what are the general shapes, and then what do I feel about it, and what do I think other people would feel about it. I think that's really important,
Okay.
especially as a designer. For instance, like I don't like Twilight. Okay,
Yeah. I feel you.
but a lot of people do, right? That these are both true statements. Anthony Jones does not like Twilight, okay, but a lot of people do. A lot of people love Twilight, okay, and hold on. Let's do some research. Yeah. Oh man, they need a. This is on the IMDb. Let's do this instead. Oh no! What the? Twilight. Did they get bought up by IMDb?
I don't know. I never watched Twilight, so
Yeah. Well, you probably weren't the demographic, so it's fine. Like, how old were you in 2008?
maybe a freshman in high school. Maybe I forgot.
Oh yeah, you were the demographic. So I guess it just wasn't in. You weren't into it.
Maybe.
So a budget of 37 million, and it made almost $400 million. That's 10 times as much as the profit. So it's clearly a commercial success. You know, let's see. Let's just type in Twilight in just general. See all the Twilight movies. This one is the latest one that came out, right? It's the final chapter. Yeah. Almost $1 billion. Yeah. Anywho, wow, that's so long ago. 7 years ago. So I don't like Twilight, but they made so many movies, you know, and people love it. People love it so much, even the fan art version of it, like the 50 Shades of Grey, people went in groves to watch that one as well. In droves, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But why? Why do people like it? Why did those people like it? Do you know? This is how I observe things. You know, I ask that question, and yeah, it's like if you're a teenage girl, right, and you're hormonal, you're trying to go through life and figure things out, right? You're into boys for the first time ever, you know. Twilight is a really good romanticizing of the idea of what boys think and how they think. Okay, like when Edward first sees Belle, he like has an orgasm, like just from seeing her. Okay, now young girls would like to believe that this is just true. You know, like all these boys are like fighting for this one person's love, right?
You actually watched the movie?
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched it with my wife. I think we were still dating. She hated it too, so. But she wasn't the demographic. She was an older woman, and she's like, "This is fucking nonsense," because it is. It's like a hilarious joke. The male equivalent of this is something like, I don't know, like the Fast and the Furious franchise. That men think that women are really into fast cars and big muscles. You know what I mean? And so it's like don't get me wrong. I think that both men and women have their urges, you know, but like I'm asking a simple question like, why was this popular, you know? And so I'm like, oh, okay, this is probably why, right? Like Edward, like he steps into the sun, and I don't know if you know this, he's a vampire, and vampires aren't supposed to go into the sun, right? Because they'll catch on fire, right? And when this moment happened, I was like, oh shit, dude, he's gonna like catch on fire. He's gonna reveal to her that he's a vampire. It's gonna be tight, you know. He's gonna get like some, like I was like, this is kind of cool. Like it's like he's so in love with her that he's willing to like get a sunburn, and like a real bad sunburn for her, you know, just to reveal to her his deepest secret, you know. And I was like, all right, here we go, let's do this. And then he does, and he steps into the sun, and he's actually sparkling. And I'm like, wait, what? And then come to find out, he's like made out of diamonds, and so like he's embarrassed to be in the sun. That's his great secret, because he's bedazzled to death, you know. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what a joke, you know. It's like, this is not the vampires I grew up with. That's at least what I was feeling. But you know, again, I thought about it. If you're a teenage girl, you have the same cultural philosophy of like getting married and whatever. your boyfriend is essentially a giant engagement ring, you know? And so I was just like, oh yeah, this is totally for this specific demographic, you know what I mean? And what 50 Shades of Grey does really good job of, on top of that, it's basically like now these young women have grown up. They're young adults now, right? And now like this is just like now they're all in it for like the sex of it. Right? Oh yeah, I want to get like dominated, you know, by like this like more realistic person that might actually exist. You know, it's more mature. I'm still not into it, but it's the same kind of thing as like I'm not too much into Magic Mike either, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. You know, it's just there's a specific audience for this. You know, and so this is the kind of ways I think about stuff. Like I have my opinion, right, and I respect my own opinion on things. You know, but I never let my opinion get in the way of letting me focus on why something was a success and respecting that, you know, respecting the game, you know, like the people who made that show, like Twilight, like they really understood who they're selling it to, you know. This is why I was so critical with the latest Cybertruck by Elon Musk, you know, because I feel like it's a complete and utter failure, not because of the way it looks. Yeah, of course I hate the way it looks, you know, but because like there is nobody that this market is made for, like that's lucrative. It's very small. And then I changed my opinion a lot slightly because I found out there's like an $80,000 model of the same car, and I said this could be the only thing that will save it. You know, because I thought it was only 40,000, but apparently to get like all the bells and whistles, it costs 80,000 and more. But even then, I'm like, I don't think that's worth it. They could have just made a really cool truck that more people would have bought. You know, I just watched Ford and Ferrari, right? That movie just came out, and one of the things is that you know, like Ferrari, like they went bankrupt, you know, because they were making like incredibly specialized cars, and not too many people were into that specialized car. So they had to kind of rebrand. They had to change a little bit. That wasn't too much in the movie, but it was like you can tell like that needed to happen, you know. And so I observe these things. I pay attention to like um, the markets. Like pay attention to how people purchase things, how people engage in things, because that's what I do for a living: is design stuff that people are going to consume, whether it's either through a video game or a movie or what have you. You know. And so as a designer, when I'm studying new shapes and stuff, I look at that like, why is this shape good, and why is it good in general, or why would it be good for others? You know. That makes you a better designer. And then you ask yourself why you like it, going back to that, because then if you don't like it or you're not interested in it, then maybe you shouldn't engage in it. Not because it's bad, it's because you don't like it for whatever reasons, right? Like I don't draw like diamond embedded vampire people because I'm not into that, you know? Um, and so that's a really good distinction to make whenever you're studying stuff. But you should also like not look for the bad always, right? Like so looking at Twilight, what I really like about Twilight is the idea of like this kind of just overtly like these people just can't control themselves, or just like this like society of vampires, but then they're like constantly like in lust with these human characters, you know. And it's like I've always been a fan of like the vampire mythos too, and it's just a cool kind of like take on it that I think makes sense, and I'm okay with it. It's just in its entirety, I'm not into it, you know. But I do like vampires. I do like that mythology. I also I also think that the werewolves being more like dogs, giant dogs, instead of like monsters. I thought that was actually pretty. That's a cool concept that I can get around. I just think the transformation could have still
I think
been.
one more question, so I want to make it short. So, Can I follow your LinkedIn profile?
I'm sorry, what?
Can I follow your LinkedIn profile?
Can you follow my LinkedIn profile?
Yes.
Yeah, what? No,
Okay, I'll do it. Huh?
no, you can't.
I see you in your class.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully that answers your question. So,
It did answer my question. I just want to make sure everybody else gets asked.
no, how dare you? How dare you take up all the class time? No, it's not your fault. I've been talking, but we got time. Don't worry, we're good. We're good. All right, we'll take another question now.
I just kind of want to butt in. Sorry, I got work really soon, so I just wanted to ask.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
What's a way to like keep thematically your designs like similar? Like I don't want to say similar, but unified, I guess, and while also keeping them distinct. Also, I created a Discord for this mentorship if anyone wants to join it. I'm gonna like it.
Tight. Say that again. Like, how do you keep things?
So, like, if you have a certain theme for your character designs, you're designing multiple characters, right? How do you keep them unified but at the same time distinct?
You mean like they're all like part of the same world?
Yeah.
Oh, you just gotta. I mean, it sounds harder. Like it sounds like it's a problem, but it's actually not as hard as you think. Like you just gotta make sure that they live in the same universe by having same elements. So, for instance, if they're all post-apocalyptic, and like you've kind of thematically decided this more like diesel punk, where they're all like wearing like diesel type clothing, like kind of something like out of Mad Max.
Yeah.
So then you just stick with that. Like you got a guy like wearing like a tire, you got another person covered in oil or grease. You wouldn't then just put like a steampunk looking fool in there. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You know? So you just gotta like pick that general concept, you know, and then just never deviate from it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you don't want to like overthink this. It's really not as crazy as you think. You just gotta like be very, very clear on what the thematics of your world is, because if you think of it too crazy, like you gotta like do like some sort of like crazy gymnastics and all that stuff to kind of maintain this consistency. I think you might accidentally do the opposite. I think as long as you just know, like if they are in a medieval setting, then just pick like a genre of medieval. What does that mean? You know, like you don't want to like make one character look like he's some sort of Celtic warrior and another one look like out of Game of Thrones. Like you should just pick what that is.
Right.
You know, like are you in Game of Thrones or are you in like Braveheart? Which is it? You know.
Right.
And then that way you can kind of navigate better. And then you can add secondary stuff, like because even with Game of Thrones, like they have more of like that realistic Lord of the Rings aesthetic, but it's even more realistic. But then they also have like more modern fashion design in their costuming. So I think the way that these designers deal with this, or how do they make this happen, is that they actually will create, or they'll just hire like a good team of artists, and then they'll create like a style guide of some sort. So when they bring on new artists, they can kind of follow the style guide a little bit. And it's more of like that leads to like a more interesting question, which is like, how do you maintain a style that's already been established? Right? That's a challenge in itself. Like how do you like for instance, when I was hired at Sony and I had to work on God of War was already developed. It was already a thing. And so I had to like stick to parameters of a project that already was prominent.
Yeah.
And for me, the way that I was able to do it was just constant questioning, just always asking questions. And, you know, my team were really good and they would help me. And then I started just creating a philosophy, very much like I was just telling you right now, like you need to do. Mm-hmm. Like the Game of Thrones versus like Braveheart type of thing. I did that with God of War. So it's like, okay, it's pretty Greek, but God of War is heavy on cloths and heavy on like faces. So I need more like faces, and I need more cloth. Usually was the way that I thought about it. You know, like I need more faces in my armor, or I need more cloth on my armor. You know, and then I had like this kind of go-to aesthetic for Greek that I would just apply to all of that, the simple principle.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be my answer to that question.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Good day at work.
Thanks. All right, you guys have a good time.
Yeah.
Sorry to bump in. I got a question just regarding to the homework that I had to do, just to recap, because I forgot to write it down earlier.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Here it comes. No, I was just a little confused because you said you don't want them all to be post-apocalyptic tribe themed. So is it just about forms?
Yeah. I
stretching them?
misspoke actually. No, it could totally be the same. It could be the same.
Yeah. No, I mean I don't mind either.
I misspoke.
Okay.
Get out of here.
Thank you.
Get out of here, Samya.
All right.
I'm just kidding.
Pleasure every time.
All right, Esteban, you had a question?
Oh yeah, it was just like a quick clarification on the homework and all that, I guess. So basically, like my goal this time is like another 20 thumbnails of the same theme, but with a consistent, like reliable, like
genre.
Thumbnail. Oh yeah, that too. But like the thumbnail like style and all that, like trying to. Like,
you should always be consistent with your style. So if you're gonna like paint them all out again, then do that again. But if like you ask for like a more simplistic approach,
or like just like something like that I could use for work like forever, you know.
Well, let me put it to you this way: you should actually aim for having fully rendered thumbnails.
Okay,
or,
cool.
Or more established thumbnails. That is obviously the dream. But as a student, as starting out, when you're trying to learn a lot of the, like, design principles, it would be best not to just always go for broke, because it might actually not help you in terms of like learning how to design better.
Yeah, because I'm not focused on just like learning design and like doing all kinds of other. Cool.
This is the place to learn design, exactly. And so if you're focused on like all of this other stuff, it could be distracting.
Yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to say something about the whole like art is magic thing. Yeah, like it's actually really funny because during Da Vinci and Michelangelo's time, art was actually considered like a trade skill because it was just like there were art schools and you would go to art school and then you were just like an artist. And it was actually Michelangelo and Da Vinci that made it into like an elevated like science and art. Because they actually like cut people like cut cadavers open and like
Leonardo da Vinci
studied, like
did that
animal
a lot.
Anatomy and so it's like,
and he did go to art school too.
Yeah, exactly. Like the like ateliers were like the standard operating procedure.
So I was using that as an example specifically about how Michelangelo's attitude towards Leonardo da Vinci, because I think eventually Leonardo also came to the consensus of like this is like a skill that can be trained, even though he went to art school. He had like what I believe is called the talent distraction. He was told he was talented, and so he just didn't think of anything else. Where Michelangelo knew he wasn't. He learned his trade, and so he despised Leonardo.
Another reason they hated each other though was because Da Vinci was this like tall, like muscular, super handsome, like openly gay guy, and Michelangelo was like this very like short, kind of like average looking, but always like dirty because he was always in the shop and all that, like very repressed, like gay guy. So that was like another point of like.
I didn't know Michelangelo was gay. Was he really?
Yeah, but like super repressed because he was like very religious and all that. So.
Oh.
But yeah,
it's like one of my favorite artists. It's like Leyendecker and Rockwell. Like Leyendecker was not openly gay, I don't think, and it was definitely a time where being gay was a real problem
Yeah.
And Rockwell was like your all American looking dude, you know, he's like white dude with a family, Christian. And so he got a lot of credit for that kind of era of paintings back in the day.
Mm.
And it's sad. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of there's a lot of people who had great artwork and great what you call it, just great messages that they would like to put out there, but because of the culture at the time, they're repressed. Sucky days.
Yep.
Sucky days. I will say that it's not necessarily true nowadays, especially in our industry. Nobody really thinks this way. Most people in the industry are pretty open-minded. I think like one of my best friends when I was going to art school, he came out to me, and I was the first person he ever came out to, and I was just like, whoa, dude, you know. And he was really afraid, and he was really scared, and he was telling me, he's like, I hope this doesn't change anything, like I really like, you know, cherish our friendship and all this stuff. And I was like, wait, does being gay make you worse at art? And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, what's the problem here, dude? And then he's just like I don't know, like some people get weirded out by it, and I was like, yeah, it's fine, but like, I don't. It's like, who cares? It's like, you like dudes, I don't. All right, let's move on with our lives. And then and that was a big relief for him, because I was one of his closest art friends. And then he came out to his parents because he was afraid. He was asking me for advice on that. And I was like, I admit your parents, they're really good people. They're really conservative and very traditional. But what's more important is that they're good people. And I think they'll come around. Like, I think maybe you're right. Like, at first it's going to be real fucking weird and sucky. But eventually they'll come around. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
Nice.
Like, his parents were just like really weird about it. And they're like, are you sure? You know, do you need help type of stuff? And he's like, no, that's not how it works. And, you know, it wasn't great. Like, it wasn't the response he was hoping for. But I think like after like a week, they like just completely turned around.
Nice. Yeah.
And like, especially his mom was just like, she just straight up just said like, you're my son and I love you no matter what, you know? And she's like, I'm sorry about my reaction. Like, I just, you know, it's just, I didn't expect it. I didn't know how to react to that. Nobody teaches you how to react to this type of thing. And he's like, I get it. And it was cool because then he told me the story where like months later, where his mom's friends were all hanging out with his mom and they were all just chatting. And it was during the time where gay marriage was kind of a problem. Like, people were like trying to vote against it or for it. Like, there was this whole thing. And they were talking about it, like his mom and her friends. And they were just like, can you believe these gay people want to get married and all this stuff? And like, they're like really trashing it. And like, and she, in any other circumstance, probably would have been in on that conversation, right? Like, joining in and be like, yeah, you know, this and that, traditional values, et cetera, et cetera. But like, now she was in a position where she had someone who she cared for, you know, deeply, her son. Like, they were talking about him, you know, and she got furious.
Nice.
And then she like unloaded on them. And then they all changed their opinions like right away because they all knew him too when he was growing up and stuff, you know? So they were like, whoa, wait a minute, you know? And sometimes that's kind of what has to happen. It's unfortunate sometimes that's how people can't just kind of think about it, just like at a moral aspect, and just kind of think like, why get in people's business? You know, and it's kind of like problematic. But yeah, he's been able to completely, you know, transfer into who he wanted to always be, and it's really good, and became even a better artist for it. And he had people like me who never ever made him feel uncomfortable. But you know, you were good friends. I was trashing him before, then I trashed him just in a different way. I used to, because I roast people a lot.
Yeah.
So then I started roasting him, but now it was more attacking who he really was versus who I thought he was. And he got a kick out of that. He laughed a lot. Like you know how people would say like eat a bag of dicks or something like as like
Yeah,
an insult to your friend. So I'll be like eat a bag of vaginas to him. He'll just crack up because the whole premise is like if you're a straight man, that's like an insult. Like I don't want to do that, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're a gay man, that's not really like all right, cool, man. Where the bag? And so I had to like change everything up, and then it was really funny. But like, but that's what I'm saying. Like our industry is really open, very very progressive for the most part, and it's actually bad for business to kind of have any kind of like backwards thinking. Because if, for instance, Esteban, like if like Leonardo da Vinci and all these people that are like were or are gay that are like they're alive today, could you imagine like not hiring them because of that? It's so stupid.
Yeah.
Then another company will, and then they're going to have that talent just because you're a dummy. You know, it's like, and I will say that the only thing that I have seen that is kind of a problem, and this is something I always tell my students to kind of pay attention to. This definitely does happen, and it's just the male and female dynamic, and it's not specifically what you think, like where like the men that don't think that the women are capable of doing work. It's not that. It's the other thing, the more sexual component of it.
Huh.
And that is definitely a thing. When you have a group of just a bunch of dudes and you got like one or two other female coworkers, it's just like a weird dynamic that some people just don't know how to adapt to. And I'm specifically referring to dudes, you know, and I've seen it. I've seen like dudes just be really awkward. Most of the times it's harmless, but other times it's not, as you probably have heard from news reports, right?
Yeah.
But that is a thing, and I have talked to some of my female artist friends who work in the industry and asked them their opinion on this, and a lot of them usually just say it's kind of like a boys' club, and sometimes they just can't necessarily like they just don't relate nearly as much as they would like to. For instance, like when I was hanging out with some of my wife's friends, and she just has a lot of friends who are like dancers, and they're all like Latino, you know, a Latina. Like I'm just not in that demographic. I don't know what to say to these beautiful Latin women, you know, and I can feel like awkward, you know what I mean? But these are just like one-off situations. Does that make sense? Like these don't happen very often, like not every day. And so I can imagine if I had to like work in these circumstances, either I have to adapt or like something, you know? And so I think this is true. And so I usually encourage people to pay attention to this, whether you're on the one side or another, and just try not to get too caught up into the weeds of it, because sometimes it can just be an innocent misunderstanding, or it could just be a straight up problem. And if it is, you should just straight up tell people. Otherwise, it's never going to be fixed. People are going to keep doing stupid shit.
Yeah.
But like here's another thing. Like when I was working, there just was very few, and it was mostly because just very few women would apply. When I was working at both Sony and Blizzard, and every time I was in these positions where I was able to look at portfolios, it would be mostly dudes. So it was never like we would see a bunch of like equally submitted artwork from all sorts of people. It was literally just like bunch of dudes almost all the time. And so I encourage usually my female students and artist friends to submit more than you think you should, because that's really the problem. There's not enough submissions. And whether, I'm not sure why this is, and I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's just the reality of it as of like the last, like in the past. I don't know how it is now because I haven't been in these circles since like 5 years, right? But definitely in the past when I was working at Sony, never have I ever seen one female portfolio go through our desks. And I didn't even think about it then too. I was just worried about my own ass. Just trying to keep a job, you know? But looking back, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And one other funny thing about that is that like we used to have two men's bathrooms and two women's bathrooms, and then we turned one of the women's bathrooms into another men's bathroom.
Jeez.
Because that's how many dudes were there. And our whole team was just dudes, all the artists from the 3D artists to the concept artists to the animators, you know, all dudes. So I don't know.
And like to get some clue of where I feel about how I feel about this, like my daughter once told me that she wanted to be an astronaut, but she said that was a boy's job.
Huh.
And then I was like, what'd you say to me? And then I pulled up YouTube and we watched like, 20 minutes of like female astronauts.
Dude, hell yeah.
And her mind blew. She was like, and I think there is some sort of like, I don't know where that began. Like, I don't think me and my wife have said anything or implied anything to her, anything at all, like clearly we don't think this way. But yet she still had that philosophy. It's weird. I was like, what the hell? Like, why the hell does she believe this? So like I said, I don't really know though. But anyway, those are the things I think, like when it comes to hiring, nobody's like actively only hiring one type of person, but at the same time, there is a lack of diversity. That's for sure. And I think that is a problem because diversity is a great tool to make things better.
Nice. I had a question about like networking at conventions and all that. Like, I guess
sure.
What would be like? I don't know. What tips do you have?
Set people's hair on fire, dude. You'll be good.
Hell yeah! All right. So just like a lighter, or like, but no, like,
no, I'm just kidding.
No, but like, because it's like for me specifically, it's like in like Albuquerque, there's like very few. Like, I haven't found like any other like digital art people here. So it's like conventions, like in other places, are like my only like, I guess, connection to like the entertainment design like community and all that. So like, what's I don't know, what are some like tips or like, I don't know, like etiquette things or whatever you can think of that's like useful for like going to a convention, like making connections, and like sustaining them even though you don't live there.
Yeah, so I always say make friends, don't network.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're trying to like network, then you're thinking in a different scope. But if you're trying to make friends, then it's not about networking anymore, right? It's about trying to make real connections with real people.
Yeah.
And if you do that, if you follow that philosophy, it lasts longer. Because if you just try to like make friends with like an art director just for the sake of it, and they're treating you like trash, or like Alyssa was suggesting, like I was just reading some of what she wrote, like if they're like homophobic, you don't want to work with that person.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like even if they're like the executive of like a big company that you would like to work for, and the industry's small, so people will find out anyway, and that job might not be sustainable because of that culture is not great. And so I say just make friends.
Yeah.
And that's all I've ever done. I don't really follow this kind of like textbook way of networking. I just make friends with people, and it does really well because it always feels genuine when you reach back out to people, even if it's about like trying to advance your career, right? It's not like you're reaching out to them because like that's what they should be doing, helping you out. You're reaching out to them because you're asking a friend for a favor, right? And giving like a friend a favor is much easier to swallow than like some random person I met at an event is reaching out to me after not talking to me for, like, do you see how that's like could be a problem?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, like that's pretty much what I've been like doing, I guess. So that's cool.
There's no trick to it. It just takes time.
Awesome.
Like there's no real faster way of doing it that doesn't get sleazy.
Yeah. Because I was thinking like it just seems like really like when I thought of it as like the business like networking sort of thing I was like, how do you do that without being just like gross?
Yeah, you just don't. Otherwise you are gross. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It just takes longer. Like for me, I've been doing it for many, many years. And so my network, quote unquote, is just massive,
Yeah.
Because of the many years I've been, and I go to lots of events, and I'm a very likable person, right? I'm not afraid to talk to people, right? And that obviously is a huge advantage for me when it comes to making networks, right? Because not only is it easy for me to talk to someone I've never talked to in my life, right? It's also easy for me to make friends with them.
Yeah.
I've lived my life and experienced many things. So there's a lot of things I can find that can connect me with that person, you know? And that's it. That's all I do. I try to find where I can connect. And if I cannot find where to connect, I just don't even worry about it, you know? Like, because there are some people that just don't want to connect with you at all. And you just got to move on, you know? And that's my opinion on that. Like, I think it's nothing fancy. You don't get too caught up on it, my man.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. That is reassuring. All right, let me let other people jump in here.
Friendship. Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, and Melissa mentioned I've seen a few homophobic phobic folks in the industry. Yeah, I don't think that's false. I think there's pretty much any kind of person in any industry. What I would say is just like it's very very rare. If it was very prominent, I don't know if I would like my industry, you know. But I don't think that that's wrong. I think there's absolutely those types of people. I didn't join a sketch group at work because there were no women in it. But see, that's my point, though. You could have been that one woman, dude. Bringing them power, dude. The WP. Oh, wait, is that white power? Oh, never mind. Let's change that.
Actually,
LP, lady power.
I was curious because you were mentioning this, and I didn't know that like it's quite male dominated.
Absolutely.
Do you think that if women who submit a reply would have a slightly more how do I say it, like favor because diversity is important?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want, man. This is safe space. Don't worry.
All right.
I'm not gonna. If I disagree with whatever you say, I'll tell you honestly.
All right.
And then I'll tell you maybe you should reconsider the wording if you say something really inappropriate. But nothing you said is inappropriate. That makes sense, right? Like if we were just taking on face value, if you just have like a bunch of testosterone-filled dudes, and you come in, and you're an attractive young lady, of course that's gonna have a different dynamic than me. You know, right? Like, I'm not to say that like I can't attract some of these testosterone men, but it'd just be different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In fact, this is the kind of thing that I always try to encourage people to recognize that there is a difference, and if people were able to just objectively not look at these situations as that'd be great. But the reality is, this is not the world we live in. You know?
Yeah, true.
And so my advice, generally speaking, in this circumstance, specifically for the female artists in this class, is I always tell people to lead with your artwork, if you could, okay? And it's not for any other reason that then you want to make sure you got the job because you are good enough for the job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You don't want no other fucking variable to get in the way of why you got that job, right? Like Laura Austin. Do you know Laura Austin?
No, might have seen her work.
She's a great illustrator, right? She's one of the best in the industry, probably the best, in like that kind of stylized. Hold on, if you type in LD Austin, I'll find it for you.
Okay.
So this is the kind of stuff that she does. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think I've seen her work. Yeah.
Yeah, she's really good.
Yeah.
I worked with her at Blizzard. We were co-workers. We worked right next to each other and became good buds.
Nice.
But she used to go by LD Austin. Now, I never asked her why or if there was any real reason for that. But whether there was a reason or not, what it did do was that nobody really knew her gender. Okay. And so again, I don't know if that was on purpose. I'm not trying to imply that this was on purpose. That's just how she rolled. Okay.
Yeah.
And whether that helped her or not in terms of people not knowing, because she used to do concept art like this, and she worked on like projects like this, you know. And so I remember even when I first followed her work, I only knew her as LD Austin, and I didn't know who she was, but I had definitely assumed that she was a dude. Okay. And then when I found out that she was female, nothing changed. I just now knew who she was. I knew her gender. You know?
Yeah.
But I know that like some people won't think that way, you know? And what was great about it is that like when you see this, you don't see it for anything other than it's good artwork. Right?
True.
And so this is true for the opposite industry as well. it's not as prominent. Women aren't necessarily as predatory as dudes are, but you can see the same can happen if you flip the script. Like if you have an industry that's dominated mostly by ladies, you know,
Mm.
because I've heard some conversations. Okay, so it's just that attraction is there, and people will respond and react to this. It's just how the world is running. So I usually encourage this specifically, okay? Because you don't want that to happen, right? You don't want to like go in to interview, right? Or you don't want to like meet somebody on that happens to just like all of a sudden offer you all these job opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a job, and then guess what? You're not able to hang, you know, because maybe you weren't actually qualified. You understand? And you don't want that kind of insecurity to start to strike you, you know, and you don't want that kind of stuff to actually affect you negatively, you know. And so because for me, when I was not good enough to get a job, I never had the problem of like, well, we can try to squeeze you in. No, they just straight up said I just sucked. You know, like we're not going to give you this job because you by far are like the worst artist in the industry.
Oh,
No, no one
actually,
said that. Nobody would
yeah,
say that, but I'm just saying like people aren't nice to me as they would be to potentially you, is what I'm getting at, you know?
okay.
And that's
yeah.
actually a disadvantage for you, is what I'm getting at.
Mm.
Do you see my point? Like it's a disadvantage if nobody's telling you how bad you are or how good you are, you know?
Absolutely. I did have a similar kind of experience in my last internship. Like, actually, this mentorship I took as a last kind of way to not give up art, because my boss kind of told me I wasn't good enough, but in a way that was so vague. I didn't really know what he meant. Like,
Sure.
clearly, he didn't want to give me a second chance, or he did kind of offer me to prolong my internship, but just kind of like to help me out because I was struggling a little bit with paying rent and stuff. But the way he said it is, well, he said it in German, but he just said that your work kind of doesn't fit to our studio. And I was like, okay, but that's so vague. Either my work is, you know, too bad for it, or like not strong enough, or I just can't really pick up the style that they're aiming for. And none of them, like when I tried to ask them, they weren't really going in too deep for that, and that struck me so hard. And from there, it just went kind of like downhill. And then I said, okay, before I really quit, I just wanna give it like all I've got, because I really, really was terrified of the thought of regret a couple of years from now, looking back and thinking, man.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just say that whenever people say that, they are just trying to be nice to you for sure. And so now I don't know what the circumstances are. I can't tell you exactly why you weren't as good as you needed to be for that studio. All I can do is help you do what you want to be good at. Okay. Because although you might want to continue working at that studio, maybe that's not your ultimate dream, right? Maybe that's not your ultimate goals of what you want to do as an artist. And that's really important to distinguish. Yeah. See, the dynamic that I have with my students is always pretty simple. I just try to get you better. Okay. Because eventually, if you have this mindset of how to get better and how to improve, you're going to get there eventually. And then you're going to start to get jobs out of necessity. Very rarely do I snap at my students. I only will do that if they aren't listening. If you listen to what I tell you and you follow my instructions pretty vividly, then you're gonna be fine. You're gonna start to see improvement pretty rapidly, right? But there's ways to explain to people how they're not good without hurting their feelings. But it takes practice to do that. But like I will say that it does help people to tell you the truth too. Like if they don't want to hire you, they'll tell you exactly why they don't want to hire you. I do this with clients too. You know, like I have a client that I was working with, and they just kept on changing their mind over and over on a lot of stuff. And this is like a big project that's going to be announced and shown to millions of people. And we were just like, you know, like we want to make sure that they do a good job, because if this goes well, then we will get our reputation increased as well. So I talked to these guys, and I was straight up just like, you guys need to, like, I feel like you guys are going back and forth and this and that. And then I pulled my guys aside and I said, you know what we should do? We should have this approach of asking for forgiveness, not for permission, because we keep waiting on them, and because of that, we're not moving anything. And so we just did that. We pitched it to them. I think it was this Tuesday. We pitched it to them, our new concept, and they loved it. And they're like, "Oh my God, it's perfect!" And we're like, "Yeah, man, it's like happens to some direction." But my point is that, like, you're not doing anybody favors if you are not being honest. And one of the things that I do with my children is the same thing. I tell, like, my son lost to my daughter in a foot race, and I explained to him. And he started crying about it, right? And I was like, explain to him, like, why are you crying? And he was like, Delilah beat me in a race. And I said, that's not a really good reason to cry, because crying is not going to do the two things that you would want, or like the thing that you want, rather. It's not going to make you faster, or it's not going to make you beat your sister in a foot race. She's not going to slow down, because of your tears. I was like, but you have a choice here. I was like, you either can, you can either just accept that your sister is faster than you, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Or start running every day and maybe beat her, It's like, otherwise, like, stop crying, dude. Like, the only thing you should be crying about is if you really get hurt, or you see someone you really care about get really hurt. I think those are very acceptable. Anything else is kind of a distraction, right? And so, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, mourning a lost one, or seeing your friend lose their job and you feel bad for them, or you losing someone that you care about, or you had a job and you lost it. Like, these are reasonable things to be upset about, and you get emotional for. But doing a bad painting, no, just keep painting. Somebody telling you have bad paintings, that's not a problem. Like, you and that's kind of the philosophy I'm trying to instill in my kids, and it's kind of the philosophy I instill in my students, because it's a distraction. Anytime you get in your own way, like, you start to rationalize some sort of external reason why all these things are the things the way that they are, it takes away from the opportunity to get better. And so, so with that being said, I think it's really going back to the kind of the specific dynamic that we were talking about. I think it's really important to kind of make yourself stand out. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, like, every instance, like, you show your face to a male recruiter or art director or whatever, somebody who has an opportunity to give you a job, they're always going to be like oogly eyes and they're like, ooh, and they just can't control themselves. No, there's definitely reasonable and responsible adults in our industry. I'm just saying, like when you start with your art first, you kind of help remove any of that potential distraction, But obviously, I always encourage going to network and go to events and talk to people, because that's still valuable. But you should always just be like, if someone's like super nice about your work and you also have a hard time getting jobs, you might need to proactively be like, no, bitch, like, tell me what's wrong with my artwork. I know you're being nice, but I can take it. Like, just tell me. Yeah, you got to, like, force their hand. And you kind of give them permission. It's like this idea of, like, a vampire can't kill you unless they walk into your house type of philosophy. Like, you have to be like, come in, vampire. Like, go ahead. Like, kill me. Like, please.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people will just not do that for you. Sometimes people say you need to have more diversity in your portfolio, or people say your style isn't good enough. Just be like, all right, but then what specifically is it? Like, what is it that you guys don't like? And maybe, and to their defense, maybe they just don't know how to explain it. That's also true too. That can be a thing. Anyway, hope that helps. It's pretty long-winded.
It did, yeah, absolutely.
What now? One of the guys had some skeevy thoughts towards women. Was like, ugh, this group would be fun, but one rotten dude ruins the fun. Yeah, that's true. That could be a problem. That is definitely a thing. Good old skeezy dudes ruining all the fun. Maybe you should just start your own sketch group. Maybe that's a solution. Get your own one going. I'll go, even though it's in a different state. I'll drive over. I'll walk over. Anyway, I'll take one more question and I'm going to let you guys go. We've been running a little late. Just because I've been ranting a little bit more than I normally do, so I feel bad. So I was making sure I get some good answers to some of these good questions. What the robot? Who's a robot? Is that Felice? You're a robot. Just type. You turned into a robot. I don't know why, but it is what it is. That's so weird. All right. Yeah, it's like what it sounded like. It scared me actually. Can you recap my homework? Oh yeah, studies. So I want let's be very specific. I want you to have like maybe 5 pages of studies, and each page should have like 6 or 7 drawings on them. Like lots of drawings. And then from there, do 10 character sketches. But it's basically 2 character designs, but 5 for each. Remember the studies? Like you got to practice drawing better. I want to see those too. Alien transmission. Phillies is like, what about us aliens? How's the alien representation in the industry? It's real bad. We have 0 aliens in our industry. Real alien phobes all over. Esteban had his hand raised, but that might have been from earlier. You guys don't have to do that. That's the first time people have ever even done that. I didn't even know that was a feature. Everyone's raising their hands. Like, put your hands down. You're making it awkward, y'all. Put your hand down, Esteban. You could just ask. I think if I had like 1,000 students, that actually makes a lot of sense to do something like that. Esteban, do you have a question though? Because now I'm confused.
Oh no, I was just doing that.
You trolling me, dude. I said make friends. Now you're blacklisted, dude. I'm gonna put you on a special industry blacklist.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have lit people's hair on fire. I think that was bad advice.
Yeah, that was definitely not bad advice. You're just not doing it right, dude.
Oh man, all right. Am I using the wrong lighter, or like, is it kind of like a fundamentals thing where it's not about the tool, it's more about like
exactly.
How I'm doing? Okay.
They have to be dead, and that way, that way there's no punishment.
Okay, cool. And then I take their hearts and consume their power.
That should have been a no-brainer, man.
Yeah. Dang. All right.
Okay. One last question. Anybody got it? Going once?
Okay, I do.
Oh,
have one. I remembered it.
Semya.
Yes.
Coming in violently.
Because yes, I'm so desperate. No, just kidding. I was just curious because I saw you start out with like big shapes.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever had a time where you started with lines, or was it always shapes for you? Because I find when I don't start with like slight line art, my work is always, I don't know, off.
That's why you keep losing jobs. Time to bring the hammer.
Yes, that was exactly.
No, I of course I started with lines. I think most of us do. I think the thing is that people don't realize the reason why we use lines is so we can see the shapes easier. And so I just kind of put 2 and 2 together essentially. I was like, what if I can just do stuff without having to do those lines? And so I just practiced that quite a lot, right?
Oh, okay.
I just practiced like just drawing shapes and then constructing from there. Because when you do line art, a lot of times what might happen is that it becomes really constraining,
Yeah.
and that
absolutely.
constraint kind of holds you locked in. And for me, I didn't like that, and so that's why I started to learn how to just draw better.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's not like it's not easy.
No, absolutely
Like
not. That's why I was.
me telling you doesn't make it all of a sudden you can do it.
Yeah.
The way I like to think about it is that like it's like if you saw me do a handstand,
Mm.
right? And then like I'm telling you how to do a handstand, it doesn't mean you can do it now.
Yeah.
You know, like you're gonna have to train, right? This is one of those things. There are some things where I can tell you like how to do, and then you'd be able to practice it right away. Like for instance, changing the shapes, like that was something you've done right away, and you were able to do it, right? You executed beautifully.
Thank
you know,
you. Yeah.
But you know, that's like that's where you're at. That's why I gave you that advice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't give you this advice of like now photorealistically paint some sort of crazy. No, like you're not there yet. We'll get there step by step. You know, that's how you get better, is to find where the student is at and give them homework that is appropriate for them, not for what I think they should be doing in the grand scheme of being a concept artist. Because that can deter people. Like when I used to teach at like large universities and I would have a curriculum and I had to stick to it and people couldn't keep up, sure enough, people would drop out. You know? And the reason why people dropped out is because they couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
It was too fast for them, the pacing of the work. And so I learned that that's not a great strategy to educating people, so I stopped doing it. And so with that being said, though, I do think that there is like I don't know, like there is like there are some fundamental stuff that you can teach people like right away, no matter where they're at, and they'll like learn. But there's also stuff that they just will never understand until they actually start to practice it. And so I try to give as much constructive feedback as possible based off of where people are at. But anyway, like this blocking and shapes specific problem is a good example of what I'm talking about, because this took me years to get good at.
Yeah.
At least 3 or 4 years.
Ooh.
So to tell you to do it, like, yeah, do it by next class. Like it's gonna be a real rough ride, because you have to have a lot of things to be true. You have to have fundamentals on lockdown. You have to have understanding of design, perspective, forms, lighting. You have to have a good control of your tool. There's a lot of things that need to be checked off before you can even attempt to do this really, really well. You can obviously practice it even at any stage. It just will always feel so bad. Like you're always fighting against the current. So anyway. All right. I'm going to go now, guys. Great question, though. All right. Peace out, friends. Talk to you guys later. Have a great weekend. I'll see you guys next week on Wednesday. Peace.
See you, AG. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.